Welcome! Today we're going to break down the science of habits, all based on Charles Duhigg's amazing book, The Power of Habit. We're going to get right into why we do the things we do, and more importantly, how we can actually change them. So, just think about your day so far. How many of your actions were actually conscious choices? You might be shocked to learn that, according to a 2006 study, it's probably way fewer than you think. In fact, over 40% of the things we do every single day aren't really decisions at all. That's right, they're habits. Almost half of your daily life is just running on autopilot. These automatic routines that our brains follow without us even having to think about it. From how you tie your shoes to the way you zone out on your commute. So, this begs a really powerful question, and it's kind of the whole point of the book. If we're on autopilot so much of the time, how do we ever grab the steering wheel? Let's dive into an incredible story that really shows us how. To really understand the incredible power of habits, let's kick things off with a bit of a mystery. It's the story of one woman's amazing transformation, a change that all started by tweaking just one single pattern in her life. Okay, so meet Lisa Allen. On the left, you see a life that's, well, it's in chaos. She was deep in debt, overweight, a smoker for years, and couldn't keep a job. But on the right, it's a total 180. She's healthy, financially stable, and thriving in her career. So the huge question is, what on earth happened? It wasn't some big, grand plan to reinvent her whole life. It all started with just one decision, made kind of on a whim during a trip to Egypt. She decided she wanted to trek across the desert. And to pull that off, she absolutely had to quit smoking. And that one little change started a massive ripple effect. Now, here's what's so fascinating. When scientists actually studied her, they realized Lisa had accidentally stumbled upon this incredibly powerful concept that Duhigg talks about all through the book, something called a keystone habit. It's this one single habit that when you change it can trigger a whole cascade of other positive changes. All right, so let's get into the science of it. How can one single habit have that much power? Well, the answer is hidden in this really simple, kind of elegant system that's running inside all of our brains. So you have to think about your brain as being, well, an efficiency expert. It is always, always looking for shortcuts. So when it sees you doing a sequence of actions over and over again, it says, hey, let's just automate this, and turns it into a routine. That way it can save its energy for more important stuff. And this whole process is what Duhigg calls the habit loop. It's a really simple three-part system. First, you've got a cue, which is basically the trigger. Then comes the routine, which is the habit itself, the thing you do. And finally, there's the reward, which is what tells your brain, hey, that was good, let's remember to do that again. Cue, routine, reward. See? Simple enough. But over time, as you repeat that cycle, the connection just gets stronger and stronger. The behavior becomes more and more automatic, and a powerful craving for that reward starts to kick in the second you see the cue. And boom, a habit is born. And here's the real kicker. Once a habit is totally locked in, the decision-making parts of your brain literally go quiet. They just check out. Your brain actually works less. And that's why habits are so powerful, and it's also why just using willpower to break a bad one almost never works. You're fighting against this deeply ingrained, super efficient autopilot system. Okay, so if our brains are on autopilot, are we just stuck? How can we ever possibly change the bad habits? Well, this leads us to what is maybe the most powerful and practical idea in the whole book. This right here is the absolute key. It's the golden rule of habit change. See, you don't fight a bad habit head on. You cleverly replace it. You can't just ignore the trigger, and you definitely can't deny the reward your brain is screaming for. But the part you can change, that's the routine. And this is a perfect example of how it works. Let's say you have a habit of getting a cookie every afternoon. The cue isn't hunger. It's that 3:30 p.m. slump at your desk. And after some digging, you realize the reward you're really craving isn't the sugar. It's the social interaction and the break. So to change the habit, you keep the cue and the reward, but you just swap out the routine. Instead of getting a cookie, you walk over and chat with a coworker for a few minutes. Same cue, same reward, totally new and better routine. Okay, so let's build on that because like we saw with Lisa Allen's story, some habits are just built different. They're way more powerful than others. They don't just change one thing. They have the power to change everything. These are the keystone habits. It's a great metaphor, right? Think of a keystone in a stone arch. It's that one stone at the very top that holds all the other stones in place. Well, a keystone habit can do the same thing in your life. it can reorganize everything around it, creating these huge positive shifts. A classic example is daily exercise. People who start exercising often start eating better and being more productive at work, without even consciously trying to improve those other things. And this isn't just about personal habits. The book talks about how CEO Paul O'Neill completely turned around the giant company Alcoa by focusing on one keystone habit: worker safety. That single focus ended up transforming their communication, their efficiency, and eventually their profits. So why do these keystone habits work so well? It all comes down to creating what scientists call small wins. When you succeed at one small, consistent change, you start to build momentum. These little victories create a new sense of self-belief, and they convince you that those bigger, more ambitious changes, yeah, they're actually within reach. All right, so this all sounds great, but how do you actually use it? Well, Duhigg lays out a really clear, super practical 4-step plan for changing any habit you want in your own life. Here's the framework. Step 1, identify the routine. That's the easy part. It's the thing you want to change. Step 2, experiment with rewards. This is where you play detective and figure out what craving you're really trying to satisfy. Step 3, isolate the cue. Pinpoint the exact trigger for the routine. And finally, step 4, have a plan. Your plan is basically you writing a new piece of code for your brain. It's a conscious choice you make ahead of time. Something like, when I feel that 3:30 p.m. slump, that's the cue, I will walk over to my friend's desk and chat for 5 minutes, that's the new routine, in order to get a mental break and some social connection. That's the reward. And this isn't some brand new idea. Over 100 years ago, the psychologist William James pointed out that our lives are basically just a collection of the habits we build up. Our character, really, is just the sum of our habits. But here's the real takeaway from this whole thing. Habits are not destiny. Once you understand the loop, the cue, the routine, and the reward, you finally have the freedom and the instruction manual to remake them. The real power of habit isn't that it controls you. It's the knowledge that you can control it. Your habits are whatever you choose for them to be. So the only question left is, what are you going to choose?